Good day, everyone. My name is Regine, and I will start our presentation with a quick look at John Stuart Mill and his idea of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the belief that the right thing to do is whatever brings the most happiness to the most people. John Stuart Mill is a British philosopher from the 1800s that helped improve this idea. He said that not all pleasures are equal. Thinking, learning, and helping others are better than just feeling good for a moment. He also believed that we should follow moral rules like being honest and protecting others because these rules usually lead to more happiness in the long run. So in his book, Utilitarianism, 1863, he said there, actions are right if they promote happiness and wrong if they cause pain. So today, we will look at Mill's version called Rule Utilitarianism and how it applies to real life situations.
Thank you, Regine. I'm Anthony, and I'll explain the difference between act utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism looks at each action by itself and asks, does this action create the most happiness right now? And if the answer is yes, then it's considered morally right. It focuses only on the immediate outcome of each situation, while the rule, utilitarianism, which is the view supported by John Stuart Mill, if you know him, says we should follow general rules that, if everyone followed them, would lead to the greatest happiness in the long run. So these are rules like don't lie or don't harm others. So Mill is often seen as act utilitarian. And when he talks about things like justice, rights, and moral education, it's clear he believed in the value of rules. He understood that stable moral rules like laws or ethical standards, it will help the society work better overall. And he also allowed some flexibility on it. In weak rule utilitarianism, rules can be broke in rare cases, but only when doing so it leads to more overall happiness.
Thank you, Anthony, for that explanation. So now I will present some thought experiments to illustrate rule utilitarianism in practice. So we have here four sample situations. So first is the please hide me dilemma. So imagine hiding a friend from a violent mob. So here's the scenario. One evening, someone bangs on your door and begs for help. So when you open the door, you see your frightened friend asking you to hide him from an angry crowd chasing him. So you hide him in your room. A few minutes later, the mob shows up and demands to know where he is. So if you tell the truth, they'll drag him out and kill him. But if you lie and say you don't know where he is, they will leave and your friend will be safe. A utilitarian might tell the truth if pleases the angry mob more than the pain of losing one person. However, rule utilitarian likely to lie because following the rule protect innocent life creates greater long-term happiness.
So this is the World Cup scenario. And the question here is, should a technician rescue one man being electrocuted by stopping a World Cup broadcast? So let me, give you a brief uh, discussion about this scenario. So during the World Cup, a man named Jones rather, gets trapped in the control room of a TV station and his arm is stuck under heavy equipment and he's in extreme pain from electric shocks. So the only way to help him is to turn off the broadcast for 15 minutes. But, a World Cup match is on and millions of people are watching. So the match won't end for another hour. His condition won't get worse if we wait, but he'll keep suffering. So the question is, should we stop the game broadcast now to rescue him? Or does the number of people watching make it okay to let him suffer longer? So for this one, Rule utilitarianism might say saving a life outweighs momentary displeasure, emphasizing rules like protect life at all costs.
So here is our third example, the organ transplant dilemma. In a hospital, five patients will die unless they each get a different organ transplant. The doctor realizes that one healthy nurse is a perfect match for all of them. So if the doctor takes the nurse's organs, the five patients can be saved, but the nurse will die. So the question is it right to kill one person to save five others? Utilitarianism might justify sacrificing the nurse to save five. But rule utilitarianism says killing innocent people violates rules that protect everyone. So it's wrong. Even if the math works out, Mill's rule based system values long term justice over short term gain.
So another case, this is about Bernard Williams' Jim and the villagers. So the philosopher Bernard Williams argued that utilitarianism makes people responsible for outcomes they didn't directly cause. To show this, he told the story of Jim. Jim is traveling in South America and uh, comes across a village where 20 men are being held by armed soldiers. So the leader, Pedro, says the men will be executed to punish recent uprisings. But to honor Jim, Pedro offers him a choice. If Jim agrees to shoot one of the man or men himself, the other 19 will be set free. If Jim refuses, all 20 will be killed. So the question here is, should Jim kill one person to save the others or refuse and let all of them die? Williams criticizes utilitarianism for putting the burden of responsibility on Jim for outcomes beyond this or beyond his control. So Mill's rule of utilitarianism might instead uphold the rule do not kill innocent people, keeping Jim's hands morally clean even if the result is tragic. These cases show how following rules, even if it means breaking them occasionally, supports the greater good, better than case by case judgments.
Thank you, Sir Anthony. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Jane Baladad, and I discuss two major refinements made adds to utilitarianism. First, his distinction between higher and lower pleasures. Mill argues that intellectual and moral pleasures are superior to bodily pleasures. He famously wrote, "It is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied." This means that the quality of pleasure matters, not just how much of you get. Now, on to justice. One criticism of utilitarianism is that it ignores individual rights, but Mill claims that justice itself is rooted in utility. It protects long-term happiness and social trust. He believed in rules like honesty and fairness because they promote the well-being of all over the time. That's why many scholars see a rule utilitarian foundation in his thinking.
Hi, I'm Andrea Mayor, and I'll talk about how Mill supported rule-based thinking and how he responded to common criticism of utilitarianism. Mill believed that people should learn moral rules, like being honest and fair, because these rules help everyone not just in one moment but over time. He also taught that big systems like laws and schools should be built on rules that increase happiness for society. Some people say utilitarianism is too hard to follow because it asks us to measure happiness in every situation. Neil answered this by saying we don't need to do the math every time. Instead, we can trust our values and what we've learned from experience and education. So, even though utilitarianism focuses on outcomes, Neil believed that moral rules are important tools that help us to do the right thing more easily and more often.
Strengths and weaknesses of rule utilitarianism. I'm Maria Moniz, and I'll cover the pros and cons of rule utilitarianism. So let's start with the strengths first. It's simple and practical. Instead of analyzing every situation from scratch, rule utilitarianism gives us moral rules like don't lie or don't harm others that we can rely on. So this makes decision making easier and more consistent. Second, we have to help protect justice and individual rights. One of the biggest criticism of Act utilitarianism is that it could allow hurting one person if it benefits many. But by following rules that respect everyone, rule utilitarianism avoids sacrificing the few for the many. So, third, we have the egalitarian. Everyone's happiness is treated as equally important. Whether you are rich or poor, powerful or not, your well-being counts the same. But of course, there's no theory that is perfect. So let's look at the weaknesses. One issue is rule conflicts. What if two good rules contradict each other? So, for example, what if you must choose between telling the truth and protecting someone's life? So, another challenge is deciding how strictly to follow the rules. So, a strong rule utilitarian would say never break the rule, no exceptions. A weak rule utilitarian might allow breaking the rule if doing so clearly, leaving greater happiness.
Thank you so much, Manitz, for explaining the pros and cons. So basically, in the end, rule utilitarianism aims to balance, consistency with compassion, giving us a structured way to do good while still caring about people in real situations. It tries to offer both moral guidance and flexibility when life gets messy. So I will wrap up our presentation. To summarize, John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism builds on the principle that actions should promote the greatest happiness. He refines the theory by distinguishing higher from lower pleasures and stressing the importance of justice, rights, and moral rules. While Mill is often viewed as an utilitarian, his support for stable moral rules and institutions align closely with rule utilitarianism. In simple terms, Mill believed we should follow rules that, if adopted by everyone, would lead to a greatest good for the greatest number. Again, thank you so much for listening. We've explored John Stuart Mill's rule utilitarianism, how he believed that following moral rules like honesty, fairness, and respect for others could lead to the greatest happiness for the greatest number. We've seen how Mill tried to balance, individual rights with the good of society, and how his version of utilitarianism aimed not just for short-term pleasure, but for long-term well-being. But now, we will leave you with a question. If following these rules means sometimes, sacrificing your own comfort or even bending what feels right in the moment, would you still accept this philosophy? Is Mill's idea of happiness through rules a guide for a better world or too ideal for the real one? That's for you to decide. Again, this is Regine. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.